5:30. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Let's determine quorum and do a roll call.
Mike Hanna, present. Dave Cravens, present.
Dan Maddox, present.
Steve Denny, present.
Lisa Floyd, present.
Bruce Rings, present.
Okay, quorum is determined. Next on the agenda, we'll look at the meeting minutes from October 30th. Anything we need to discuss or amend? All right, hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
Make a motion.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Good.
Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, minutes approved. Old business, it doesn't look like we have anything to discuss there. We'll move on to the next item. So the new business piece of our meeting, which will be the budget and spending plan. Scott, you want to kick it off?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So a couple things, and then we'll have Brady from Review present. So this is sort of like your long range plan. This was also submitted minus the 750 was submitted to the town council. The clerk treasurer felt like chief deputy felt like we needed to have that submitted to the town council and their approval. So it may feel like cart before the horse tonight because you guys are going to do the spending plan, which is your budget. So anyway, this just you've seen it all except for maybe Bruce a bunch of times. How cash flow looks. We have the cash balance that's hanging around $1 million right now. And it's just a good summary sheet. And then you can sort of, I wouldn't go much past 0.7 as far as how that's going to look 2 years out. So with that, so you're up to date on knowing what the town council actions are. And so we'll have Brady come and present the spending plan, which is required by state law.
Hello, like you said, my name is Brady Rogers. I'm here with Reedy Financial Group. We're here to do a couple of your final reporting requirements before the end of the year for your TIP areas that we have. So the 2026 spending plan, what this is essentially just, if you look on page 2, these are kind of some projections that we're expecting for expenditures next year. Now we have inflated these numbers slightly just in case anything else were to come up, because once we have this submitted, if there were any changes, I think she might have adjusted it a little bit. But if there are any changes that were to come up, we do have to update this and upload it to Gateway. So that's why we go ahead and inflate everything 10 to 15%. But it hasn't broken out kind of generic terms. So we have debt payments, we have stuff listed for, we have just capital expenditures as well as professional expenses. So throughout on the other page, so page 3 here, it lists the debt payments that we're planning on paying for. And then the rest of these are just kind of an explanation for what each of the letters indicate in terms of, capital expenditures, grant contributions, things of that nature. So basically we just have to approve this tonight, then I can get it uploaded to Gateway, and we have to have that completed before December 1st.
So one note is that if you go back to the beginning where it shows the capital expenditures, that does not have depot parking lot.
Correct.
And so if we do decide to do that project or a portion thereof of that project, then we'll come back and do an appropriation through town council. And then what would we have to do?
We would just have to amend the spending plan and update these values and upload it to Gateway.
So that you would have to take formal action to amend this. But if we're doing the project, you go further to do the project. So
Any questions on the spending plan?
Bruce, do you want a deeper understanding or explanation of any of these items since it's first shot looking at it?
Yes, I'm just tell you, I don't know what all this is. So
Yeah.
I get the process, but I haven't reviewed any of this, so.
Would you mind just going through kind of line by item through Exhibit A and just kind of give a very high level overview?
Yeah, so it's actually a lot of the details for this came from this sheet here
Right.
as well. So the debt payments, if you refer to page 3, under A, those are the different debts that we have outstanding. So those are going to be, that's how we come up with that number. As far as, let's take a look.
You know what I could explain this sheet, Bruce. I probably should have done that. So if you go to this sheet. So the RDC money comes from TIF revenues, tax increment financing. So that the first 4 line items are the revenues that we receive from parcels that are TIF. So we get all the property tax on that parcel of any increased assessed value. We capture all that. It doesn't go out to the county or the schools or anything like that. Then the next one is payments. And those are bond obligations. So there's certain projects like the new water treatment plant, that those bonds were backed by TIF revenues from parcels that were TIF, and they were specific parcels. So you have our revenue and there are payments to those bonds. And then other expenditures are sort of the discretionary expenditure, right? That we're not locked into. And this is just list basic projects. So this year was mostly a lot of the downtown revitalization plan that you're familiar with, the comprehensive plan, those sorts of things. And then you could see in 26 what we planned to at other projects. So then that just shows in the end a total cash flow, because it does have the depot parking lot, which is quite expensive, $750 million. We've not made the decision to do that. This sheet is to show you what the cash flow would look like if we did make that expenditure. We've saved about $1 million over the last few years, so we have extra cash on hand.
Right.
So we use the capacity to spend more than our annual revenue is on a large project.
This also is assuming that revenue is stagnant for the next now 4 years,
Yes,
which we probably,
it'll change.
right,
This is
this,
all based on what we know now.
Yeah.
So TIF revenue will change. The 26, 27, 28, 26 will probably be different. We
Yeah,
can
I
talk to
mean-
that.
because
this
of
is
new
just
things
conservative.
coming online.
Yeah,
Right.
other updates or anything with the assessed values.
That's why you really can't trust it. We call it the 20-year plan, but you can't trust it past 10.
Yeah.
And when's the anticipated impact of the JDK project from a revenue and expense side?
You won't see that until you see buildings going up. So hopefully he's motivated to do that. The economy doesn't crash. So that's what that is dependent on.
Yeah, but so now we're not projecting anything
No,
out there.
no, yeah.
Maybe a little land value increase,
Yeah.
but not
Is that your-
It's
very good.
It's a
yeah.
good picture.
This is a side question. It's probably not relevant for this meeting tonight, but since we're talking about these numbers, the wellness center contract payment,
Yeah.
if for some reason that would ever shut down or be sold, would our obligation to that be then completed?
I don't think so. I think it continues with the agent as if it's
Okay.
the right term. It would go with the land.
I'm not sure which contract you're referring to, but
With the wellness center. So there's a reverse TIF abatement on that, where they go ahead and pay the property tax. And then we reimburse them a certain percent. I think it's like 80%.
Yeah, 8% of their
yeah, I'm happy to look at the
tax
contract.
obligation.
It's nothing pressing at all. I was just looking at the numbers. I was just wondering just about that. So.
That is a good question. And I do believe it goes with the
Well, if it ever comes up that way, we can look at it then.
Yeah. It is a good question. Trouble is, none of us were here that
Right,
it happened, so.
right, right.
Well, good conversation. Any other questions or comments regarding the budget and spending plan? All right, hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve as presented?
Motion.
Your support?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Spending plan approved. Thank you.
And then do you want to get the copy of the signed one and hold on to the original one? And just email it to them?
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
We'll do that. Keep it for that.
Perfect. Okay, and then the last thing we have is your final reporting requirement for the TIF, and that is going to be the TIF impacts presentation. So page one here, this is just showing all the reporting requirements that we have to do on an annual basis. Wait a second, so. Good job.
Not my usual.
All right, so the green check marks are all the ones that we've already done. Prior to December 1st spending plan, that's what we just completed. So now we're doing the prior to the December 31st, just the end of year TIF presentation. So next slide, inside the RDC, what this is showing is all of the allocation areas. It also lists their creation year, expiration year, as well as the 2025 incremental AV. So we have that for each area and then a total there at the bottom. Next slide, this is going to just be an overview of how the TIF works. Most of you are probably familiar with this. If you have any questions, I'm happy to go over it, but this is just indicating, you know, when the TIF is established, how the AV works with the growth and everything. So I'm not going to go into too much detail, but if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer any questions about that. Next slide, this is our financial position. So we have two funds currently that we're tracking. We have the TIF fund as well as the TIF savings fund. So this is showing our beginning year balances. It's showing projected revenues, projected expenditures, and our projected year-end value. So you can see here that we should end with over 1.5 million at the end of the year, which is doing pretty good. Next slide, this is just going over current and future projects that we have.
Real quick,
yeah.
Where's the revenue from, that feeds the TIF savings fund come from?
I would have to double check. I think that's just interest, the revenue. I don't remember
Okay,
why we had to create the savings fund.
That's a clerk treasurer question.
I believe that the revenues that we're showing are just interest though.
Yeah, the revenue is,
That's coming in. Now, why the 134 was in there at the beginning. I
is that
believe
an
we just
interest
started tracking
reserve
that
for
last year.
some of the bonds that are out
That,
there?
that might be the case. I would have to look into the plan. I didn't bring a financial plan with me, unfortunately. But I can definitely look into that to verify.
part of our funds sit in a checking and in a safe.
But to piggyback on his question, I would like to determine how the funds are distributed. Like if you say some of them come from the TIF fund and then go into the savings fund.
Since I've been here, we've never even money in the savings fund. But I think money got moved into that some years ago, maybe a higher interest, I don't know.
But we don't have any restrictions on that. I mean, it can act just as TIF dollars act for us today.
Right, I don't think
Okay.
I think if it was labeled bond reserve fund, then it would be.
If it says
called-
so, okay.
I
Yeah,
think it's all interest that is gathered and they just kind of
Yeah.
prorated, but they divvy that up to all various accounts, funding accounts. General fund, yeah. I think they spread it across the board.
Okay.
Not the direct,
I know electric capital, electric and water depreciation, they're in the savings account too, and we've never gone out of it, and it's the only revenue it's received has been from interest.
Gotcha.
So Karen may even tell you what I just told you. I don't know. That's the way it was put when I got here, and
Sounds good.
which I think is probably the most likely.
All right.
I did have a question.
Yep.
So these current ongoing projects, all these are already in the TIF district.
Yeah, current ones are already in the 25 expenditures. If you looked in the 25 column, you would see. some of it.
Yeah, a lot of those are already listed in there, and then we have the future plans that we're hoping to get started in the near future, so. This is currently what most of the TIP dollars are being used for.
Thank you.
All right, so TIF impact question. So what we're gonna do is we're going to essentially look at your TIF and pretend that there's no TIF, but all of the development and everything that is here now is still here, just without any sort of TIF obligations or any of the TIF being involved. So if we look on the TIF impact chart slide, this is going to show the circuit breaker impact. So what this would do is if we were to take all of the base or all of the AV and spread it across the base, what it would do is it would increase the circuit breaker impact credits, which would be a total of $860,474. And then also the rate driven funds, those have set rates, so that would be almost $80,000 there. So you can see the total percentage of impact there. And then when you compare that with the 2025 budget, so like you can see some of these numbers seem high, but comparing it to the total budget of everything, most of them are, less than 1% or around 1%. Pendleton Civil Town was at the 4.58%. So that's the biggest one that we have. So what we use all this information here to establish what the TIF revenues would be if there were no TIF. It would be $940,368. Because of the TIF, the total amount we're projecting for is $1,563 or $563,815. So total additional revenues due to the TIF are the $623,447 with a TIF margin of 40 cents. So for every dollar that's brought in, because of, well, I guess you can flip to the next slide if you'd like. This kind of breaks it down as the RDC TIF margin of 40 cents. So for every dollar brought in from the RDC, or because of the TIF, I'm sorry, 40 cents of that would not be there if it were not for the TIF. So it breaks it down here. Basically the same thing I said, the 1.5 million is the total amount collected in 2025. 623,447 is gathered due to the TIF. And only the 940,368 is what would be collected if there were no TIF.
So the other units are losing out the 940,000. Would that be a simple way of putting that?
Losing out is in terms of money,
They would never see the revenue. If there was no TIF, then the other units of government would see a change in their revenues, right?
right? But with the circuit breaker impact and the rate driven funds, that would have a pretty big impact on the amount. That's why those numbers are different.
Question.
Yeah.
Maybe a dumb question. With Senate Bill 1, and they're adjusting the tax levy back to 21 to 20. And does that affect the circuit breaker? Is that gonna affect the projected revenue for these TIFs? Or something we need to keep an eye on?
It's something we should keep an eye on, yeah. I don't have any projections for that quite yet. But that is something that we are tracking the effects of the Senate Bill 1.
So I
So,
don't think no town really knows how to do a real good projection right now.
yeah, it's been all over the place.
And then they canceled the early session, and I guess they told them they wouldn't report back to January,
Yeah.
So,
So we are tracking that pretty closely.
So thanks to their work, we do know the town, only about 10% of the towns come out okay. We're one of those 10%, mostly because our average household income is high and we're growing in population and assessed value. Assessed value. Right, so like if you're a stagnant town or city, or you have a low household medium income, because a lot of the replacement is local income tax. So that's why that's true. That'd
Yeah.
be a good way of doing it.
County assessor tried to run out where most of the counties and rate 10% on all the residential properties and 25% on commercial properties this year. So the way the assessments will hit, hit on the levies would be offset a little bit. Just curious, I wasn't sure how it affected the tip.
Yeah.
I didn't really
It
understand.
distinctly is a shift away from property tax to income tax, to local income. I think you'll just keep, I think they'll all, in the long run, always be a property tax because their services directly related to property, like police fire. But being predominantly property tax revenue for local governments, low income tax, and now you're gonna start local income tax play a bigger role.
Something that comes up there in House Bill 1001, we'll probably shut it off.
When will we see, when's the projected first year we'll start seeing the effects of Senate Bill 1? Is that 27 or 28?
Well, I believe you'll see it in 27.
Be a lot more than 28 probably.
How does our TIF margin match up to?
So this one's a pretty good one. I looked up last year's and it was at 15 cents. So it's gone up quite a bit even just from last year. So
Why would that be?
ADs changing.
Mhm.
But 40 cents is, I mean, it's, I would say about right in the middle. It's not the highest I've seen. It's definitely not the lowest I've seen.
And what's the risk of it getting too low?
I'm not sure if there's really too low. I guess it would just be.
I mean, it has to be positive, right?
Right, yeah. So I've never seen one get to where we've ever had any issues, so I wouldn't really know, to be honest with you. I can look into that.
I think maybe debt payments, right?
Yeah,
Would be-
debt payments that would be the biggest issue, yeah.
Yeah.
If you can't cover those.
Yeah, and if I may add, I think one of the other positives with Senate World Act 1 is at least the allocation areas in our town are not reliant on residential TIFs.
Mhm.
So that's a positive where
Yes.
many of the communities that have those, that's where they're potentially going to see us.
Right, that's going to get really pinched.
Yeah, we had some clients that had some big issues with the residential.
Are there many residential TIFs in Indiana?
I mean, I would say a fair share.
We've been, our firm's been involved in some,
Hmm.
I mean, the law has changed
Right.
to make it a little easier to do it now. But I think we'll see what happens now with legislation.
Yeah.
Probably good we don't have one. For now.
So-
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's always been the fear of 2008. Right. Yeah. You could end up with a reverse.
And that's, I mean, you guys have any other questions? Those are the two reporting requirements that we came to fulfill tonight, and all we have left to do is upload the resolution to Gateway and everything should be all set.
So do they need to take a vote on the resolution?
They already did.
So,
Not for this. This one's.
Just on the spending plan.
Yeah,
This is
this has been.
Sounds good.
so we are gonna need signatures?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think.
Okay.
Assume this is what. Yep. But yeah,
Thank you.
thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah.
Thanks for your time. Right, is there any other new business to discuss?
One note, we were talking about it earlier, we saw us talking about. If one of the other units of government that are affected by our TIF want to come in and hear this, then it's most likely we're gonna have a December meeting. Because of the Heritage Hub, which is the hotel. And if that happens, then we'll go ahead and you'll see this presented. They'll have their questions and we'll give them a chance to those, I guess.
Is there any public comment tonight? Go right ahead. Floor is yours.
I know every word have a legal meaning behind it. So what I'm going to ask will be the layman term, and I probably use the wrong word.
It's all right.
But from the past several meetings, you're talking about the, okay, first of all, the something about the developer building a hotel, charging tips to the hotel, right? And then the developer requests an 80% refund to the developer. So it sounds like we're taking the tax money from the hotel that paid and then refund 80% to the developer. And that's kind of oxymoron. And instead of taking giving money back to the developer, why don't the city use that 80% and set up a revolving loan fund for the downtown business to improve their projects?
Yeah,
So,
if I
so
may-
legally, seem to be, to me, sound like a kickback to the developer.
Well, I would, if I may, Commissioner members, and to address this, I think that it's a great question, first of all, right? And one of the things when we talk about tax increment financing incentives to potential developers that want to come to our community is, will they build it if this commission doesn't provide incentives? And that's what like Scott and Denise and other team members are working behind the scenes like hours going through it. And what we talk about a lot of times with clients and communities, it's like the but-for test. It's but for providing incentives with the tax increment financing or TIF, this developer wouldn't come to the community. And it's a balance test. And I think, this community in particular has one of these things I know Scott and Denise talk about all the time. It's a very attractive community. And we want to be very selective in how we incentivize developers. And that's why with this particular hotel developer, since I've been involved, at least it's been going back and forth for, weeks and months. Do we want to provide incentives? They've asked for incentives and it's just been back and forth. And it will, likelihood be back before you all at some point to make a recommendation. And this body will, but it goes back to the developers saying, but for us getting some of the TIF to build our public infrastructure, we aren't going to be able to build. That's really the question most often.
The tax revenue is probably gonna generate what they're getting out of TIP anyway, and that goes into infrastructure, fire, police, and everything else.
And many times then where Brady and his team come in and they say, hey, but for this TIP, this development wouldn't have come in, and you can see the numbers. And I think just an example of what they showed tonight, they're saying, for basically this TIF is bringing in a pretty considerable amount of money to the redevelopment commission first, but once that rolls off after that period, and maybe, each of the allocation areas will have different areas. And then once that rolls off, those tax dollars go back to all the taxes.
That might be on one side of the story. The only reason if I want to come to Pendleton to develop, because there is a reason for that, because there's enough rooftop. Because I talked to some friend, they say, well, we come to Pendleton because we have enough rooftop and I can make money in Pendleton. I will come anyway with or without the kickback, if I'm concerned. I use the term probably wrong, okay?
Yeah, no, that's all right.
But so they will come because they're gonna make money building a hotel. They're going to so we need to not keep on giving kickback to the developer because they're gonna come anyway. So we need to use the money to revitalize downtown. You keep talking about beautification of downtown, but it's all talk but no action. Yes, we have Main Street did a very good job. Okay? So it's too bad we failed, but there's nothing
So
to what you guys talk about. Is that correct?
So you asked what I think is the most pertinent question for a town to ask. So this is worth going over because TIF is not easy. Let me talk you through three scenarios. So first of all, the one is the way why TIFs were originally set up.
Like, I don't
Yeah,
care about
so,
that.
well, I know, but I don't know how to explain the other scenarios unless you go back to the basic. So essentially what happened is you had an area, normally it didn't have maybe roads, definitely didn't have any infrastructure. So the town would have to build sewer, water, and maybe a road out to where an empty field could be developed. Let's say near an interstate interchange, right? Which wasn't too long ago, that's the way it was here. So you would TIF that parcel, right?
Okay,
That's a sort of a layman term. We use other. So any increased value of that, in other words, the revenue from property tax would be captured and the town would capture that and nobody else could get it. The school corporation, the county couldn't get it. And then the town would use that to pay off the bond for sewer, water, road, right? The risk to the town, the old traditional way is, what if you have a 2008, everything crashes and nobody's building on that land and you were counting on, and you put in the water and sewer and you were counting on that land to have buildings put on there to increase the assessed value. So the town would be carrying a very large risk because you still have to make those bond payments, even though there's no TIF revenue in it. And you were dependent on the economy for capitalists to build on that property, but they weren't going to build because you didn't have sewer, water, and the road. Now you got sewer, water, and the road, you bond it, you got bond payments to make, and then all of a sudden the economy is sluggish, more sluggish than you thought it would be. And the buildings aren't going to happen for another 5 years or 3 years until the economy recovers. So the town would have to eat it. Okay. So now let's go to what we just did with the property that is just south of your property. It's the Kulkarni property. All right. There was something that we needed to happen that was worth incentivizing for the town, and that is an alternative way to run traffic instead of everything funneling through town, which is almost to the point where it's jammed up. So what happens there is you have the TIF revenue, you TIF those parcels out there. And instead of the town having the bond, the developer holds the bond and he's obligated to make the bond payments. So the risk is on him. And if a 2008 happens, he's stuck making the bond payments and not the town. So this is a new way of handling that shifts the risk from the town with bond payments to a developer. So what we did with that is normally, like, the first initial proposal was they get 90% of the TIF revenue to make the bond payments. We sat down with Reedy, with Densmore, and we said, no, we need to do a cost benefit analysis. What's a more fair way? We don't want them to have an obnoxious windfall or whatever if the economy is really good. And it ended up being, what was the split? Not 90-10. 75, 75. Yeah, yeah, for the Kulkarni. So now, in the old traditional way, every bit of our TIF revenue, in our first example, would go to that bond payment, and there would be nothing left over for the town. The Kulkarni example, the risk is now on them to make the bond payments. We give them 75% to make those bond payments, but we get 25%. Now we have some discretionary spending. So not only have we shifted the risk, but now we have some cash flow. All right.
That sound like I have a piece of ground out there and I want to attract business. So I'm going to put some whatever to do that. But But if there's no business coming, why you want to attract the business if there's no business coming in to begin with?
We didn't agree to that to
So,
attract business.
so that's why doesn't make sense to me that
We
if
didn't do it
80%,
to attract business. We have something that this town needs, and that is an alternative way that's very expensive, an alternative way to get traffic around the downtown. That's why that project was incentivized the way it was. Because in the end, not only do we get 25% revenue, but in the end, we get a $6 million road that had we not done the deal, we would have been either paying the bond payment for that $6 million road or somehow come up with the cash for $6 million.
to me, we seem to be, right now, the discussion is switching chicken to duck from duck to chicken. So it's not related to the original question is why we're giving that kickback? Because if business will come, they're gonna come, they will build a road, they will do all this stuff, they will do all that kind of stuff. If they want to come in, like the milk company, they want to come into Anderson,
No,
they pay for everything coming in.
No, so that's another factor you just touched on. That road on our thoroughfare plan is designed to go through and connect up to Old 132. All right. So the town needed this road. It was not done to incentivize growth or business or anything like that. It was to incentivize a need, an asset that the town needed. It's
Anyway,
the first time I read it, I thought this is bull. I was like, until I grasped what they were saying, or the previous attorney slapped me upside the head and said, look, they're shifting the risk from the town to the developer. Doesn't that sound good to you? And I'm like, oh yeah, now I get it.
yeah, but that doesn't answer my question. My question, if I'm in business, I count enough rooftop in Pendleton, I know they can make me business, I'll come to town. And I will build there anyway.
Mm.
Whether you're gonna build a road or not, that's
So,
what my argument is.
so with the hotel, the big question is that we've been asking ourselves, are we in a situation where we don't want to incentivize anything that the market's going to drive anyway? Like, why would you incentivize a restaurant? A restaurant should only locate here if it's going to have enough of the market share.
Because there's enough rooftop, they fly the helicopter over it,
Right,
they count the rooftop,
right,
and then they decide if they want to come here.
right.
So if I want to come here, I will build a road, I'll do it, whatever.
Yeah.
So I don't need a kickback because I will make money.
Yeah.
So this kickback thing seemed to be, I don't know what you call it, is excuse me for using the wrong language, it's ass backward.
It does feel like it. So with the hotel, there's a quirk to it, thanks to our attorney pointing us out to it. We did some due diligence and that parcel, the whole business park was TIF'd, except lo and behold, just our luck, those two, 5 parcels, 12 acres, five parcels.
8 parcels where they resurveyed, but yes.
Yes.
5 developments.
5 developments. It was never TIF'd. So now we're in a situation with under new law. I don't know, Rob, if you want to try and explain why we're having to take a real hard look at the hotel and why, if we want to get TIF revenue, we sort of are almost obligated to have a bond involved with the hotel.
Well, I think that this is probably much bigger discussion than this meeting. And one of the things that we've suggested is dedicating a meeting coming up in 2026, where we could have our team talk with you all commission members, just about overall TIF and the benefits and the pros and cons. We of course have Reedy here to go through it. One of the things we're looking at with Heritage Hub and that development is if we are going to set up an economic development area, which is again a statutory process, and then create allocation areas, then we have to have a very definitive plan for projects that are going to be set in there. And the developer has come to the town, or the RDC, but through the town staff, and has asked for, again, incentives, and I'll use that term instead of kickbacks, just for the technical term. And they just said, hey, this is what we believe that we need, again, to build the public infrastructure that's inside their development. And oh, by the way, they're also gonna do a number of other things that they've come to the town as part of their offer, if you will. And Scott and Denise and many others have gone back and forth and said, well, we're trying to figure this out to determine whether or not we want to make a recommendation to this body to say, hey, we think this is favorable. And if it is, Reedy will provide a number of analysis. But the remaining parcels or allocation areas, if Scott and Denise again and the team want to recommend, we're going to have other requirements in order for the RDC to capture that TIF allocation area. That would be whether it's parks. Again, I think you have a whole bunch of suggestions to this body, but again, that's probably a bigger discussion, and there are legal requirements that we have to really dot our i's and cross our t's to follow. We can't just say, hey, we're going to tip everything without a plan. And that's, I think, where you were going down, but it's a pretty, the detail.
We're in a sort of a quirky situation, I think, because it wasn't already TIF. It's forcing our hand. I would never incentivize, I mean, personally, I am totally opposed to incentivize anything that would have been market driven. Whether it's a grocery store or hotel, restaurant. But if there's some advantage to the town as far as increasing its TIF revenue, that's what we're trying to look at. And so it's very complicated, right? You
Yes.
guys have had a difficult time with it.
We've gone back and forth over that analysis.
Yeah.
A lot.
So we're not done baking the cake yet.
I
Let us-
like, Rod, I really appreciate that offer. I think that's a really good idea next year to bring in with your team and Reedy and have a deeper conversation about that, but it's probably let's finish that at another time. Appreciate it. And thank you for the comment. Certainly it's a balancing act when you're thinking about incentivizing certain activities. And Scott, that was a really good explanation. Appreciate it. Are there any other public comments for this evening? Okay. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Thanks, Doug.
All in favor? Aye.